guys, welcome back. If you're new here, my name is Becca and today we're going to be talking about all the series I DNF'd, finished and made progress on in 2018. Now, one big flaw in the way that I've been tracking these is that I did not count any books that were released in 2018 that were the first book in a series, and no other books were going to be published in that series during 2018. So these are just the series that do have multiple books published as of 2018. So if you watched my 2018 reading stats video, you will see that a massive 72% of the 89 books that I read in 2018 were a book in a series. So I thought we should talk through those series, see whether I finished them, whether I'm still making progress, or whether I DNF'd. So that 72% was made up of 20 different series. 3 of those series I DNF'd, 7 of them I finished, and 10 of them I'm carrying forward into 2019. So we're going to split them into sections and talk through them, and the first one is going to be the series that I DNF'd last year. So the first series that I DNF'd was the Curse Workers series by Holly Black. I read the first book in this series, which was White Cat, and this is an urban fantasy. This series follows a family that are kind of like a supernatural crime mafia. Now, this book made it into my worst books of 2018, so I'm not going to dwell on it too much, but I just don't really get on with Holly Black's writing. I previously read The Darkest Part of the Forest by her, and I thought that I would give White Cat a try in case it was just the story that I didn't gel with, but I have decided that Holly Black's writing is just not for me. It includes a lot of suspending your disbelief, which is something that I'm not very good at, and because of that, it does not have the world building that I personally require to really enjoy a fantasy book. The second series that I DNF'd was the House of Night series by PC and Kristen Cast. This is a supernatural vampire story, and I did manage to read 2 books in this whopping 13 book series before I decided I wasn't going to continue. So this follows a girl who has just been turned into a vampire, and so she goes to the House of Night, which is a academy where they train vampires. The way I just described that, it sounds a lot like the Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, which, you know, it kind of actually is. One thing I did really appreciate about this series is that they had a very unique take on vampires. It wasn't the classic you get bitten, you die, you rise again kind of story, and I really liked the setting of the academy where they learned all things vampiric. However, after the second book, I realised that I just didn't really care, and the writing was kind of bad. I didn't really enjoy it, and so I just decided to call it quits. And then the last series I DNF'd, I hadn't decided I was DNFing until I decided to make this video, but that is the Binti novella series by Needy Okorafor, and this is a science fiction series that follows Binti, who is from an African earthen tribe and decides that she wants to go to university in space. I have a big problem with novellas because I like series, as you can tell from this video, and also really big fantasy series. Enough information does not fit into a novella format to really satisfy me, and so instead of carrying on, even though the books are quite short and I could get through them easily, I've decided just to give up because I'm not hooked, and this book was one of my most disappointing books of the year. So moving on to the series that I actually completed in 2018. I started off the year strong, and the first book that I finished was Finale by Becca Fitzpatrick, which is the last book in the Hush Hush series. This is a paranormal romance centering on fallen angels. It follows, you know, a girl who falls in love with a fallen angel, and drama ensues because they're not supposed to be together. But I actually really liked this series. It had one really bad book, which was the third one, but apart from that, you know, it was a bit swoony. It was tropey, but it wasn't like awful, and I enjoyed it for a early 2000s paranormal romance. Then I read the entire Divergent trilogy by Veronica Roth, which is a dystopian that follows this world that's separated into factions. When you get to a certain age, you are tested and put into one of the factions. If you don't fit into any, you are considered divergent, or if you test into more than one, and that's not a good thing because for the government to have control over society, people have to fit into their boxes and stay there. I really liked the first book in this series, but I don't think the second 2 were as strong. I did enjoy the storyline. However, I have already forgotten a lot about this series, and it isn't one that is going to stick with me, but I did enjoy it when I read it. Last year, the Throne of Glass series came to an end, and I reread read the first 6 books in this series and read the last 2 for the first time. This is one of my favourite series of all time. As you guys know, I am mass trash, and this follows an assassin who's been thrown into a slave mine for her crimes, and then one day the crown prince comes along and springs her because he wants her to be his tribute in a competition to become the king's champion, which is essentially the king's personal assassin. The series ends very far from where it began, but I absolutely loved the journey, and these books are just so good and I absolutely adore them. I also read both books in the Creekwood duology, which is Simon versus the Homo sapiens agenda and Leah on the Offbeat by Becky Albertalli. I liked them both okay, but to be honest, I don't think I really like Becky Albertalli. I mean, I did rate these books quite highly because when I go into books like this, I do start to take into account the fact that I generally don't like books like this, and so I try to be more impartial when I rated them. I do think that they are good. Leah not as good as Simon, and I think that a lot of people will find a lot of value in them and really enjoy them, but just Becky's writing style and her characters weren't for me, and I didn't love them. Another one of my favourite series that came to an end last year was the Red Queen series by Victoria Aveyard. I reread the first 3 books in this series and read the last one for the first time. I think that this series is really good. A lot of people say that it's super tropey, but I don't think it's any more tropey than any other young adult fantasy series. And this follows Mare Barrow, who is a red-blooded citizen in a world that is separated by the colour of blood. Red bloods are normal humans and are the lower class, and the silver-blooded citizens are the elite and have superpowers. Mare Barrow thinks that she's just a normal red blood until one day she discovers that she has the power of electricity, and the Silvers find out and take her into the royal palace to cover up that she is a red with silver abilities. I will say that the second book in this series is a serious low point, and a lot of people really don't like it, myself included, but the rest is really, really good, and I thought that the conclusion that was released in 2018 was phenomenal. A series that isn't completed yet, but I have read every installment that has been published, is the Saga graphic novel series by Brian K. Vaughan and Fiona Staples. There are 9 volumes published so far. I read and adored every single one of them. This is a sci-fi graphic novel series that is like Romeo and Juliet set in space. It also has aspects of Game of Thrones where there are many different factions and you like all of them, but they don't like each other, so there's deaths on all sides. I really love this. I thought it was emotionally powerful. The plot is really gripping. The art is beautiful, although not as much in the first volume. It's a little bit more rough. Generally really stunning, and I'm so glad that I read this because this ignited my love for graphic novels, and I'm excited to try a lot more in that format in the future. Another new favourite, I read the Strange the Dreamer duology, which is comprised of Strange the Dreamer and Muse of Nightmares. I read them both in 2018. This has become one of my favourite books ever. It follows Laszlo Strange, who is a librarian in a world where librarians are looked down upon, and he is obsessed with this mythical city of Weep, which is for most people just a myth, but he's convinced that it does exist and he wants to find it, and maybe he finds a way to realize his dreams. This book introduced me to Laini Taylor. I absolutely loved both installments in the duology. They just made me feel so many emotions, and I now can't wait to get to the Daughter of Smoke and Bone series by Laini. Midway through the year, I went through a new adult binge and I read the entire Slam series by Colleen Hoover, and this follows a girl who has just moved into town and she starts to like this guy, he starts to like her. Then she starts her first day at school and finds out that he's her teacher. Now, you know me, I love a toxic, problematic romance, and that's exactly what these are. However, I will say they were a 3-star series apart from the last one, which I gave 1 star because it was unnecessary. So if you do want to read this, I would say probably just read the first 2 books. The last one is like completely unnecessary. But this was exactly what I needed at the time, and it's just like... it's like candy, you know. It's bad for you, but you still love reading it. And then the last series that I actually started and completed in 2018 was the Southern Reach trilogy by Jeff Vandermeer. The first book being Annihilation, and there is a movie also based on this book. This is a very hard science fiction series that is very dense and very bizarre, and it doesn't really answer a lot of the questions you have going into it. But this follows an area called Area X that has sort of closed itself off from the world, and the government is sending in expeditions to find out what exactly is going on there. Why is everybody who comes out of it seriously fucked up? What are all these weird plants that we're collecting samples of from this area? And it's just the mysteries of Area X, what's going on inside there, how it was created, and things like that. I really loved this. It was very bizarre. This is the first like hard sci-fi series that I've ever read, and I really loved it. Even though it had like a speculative ending, enough was wrapped up to keep me satisfied while still leaving a whole lot of ambiguity. And then lastly, we have the 10 series I will be carrying through into 2019. The first one of these is Rebel of the Sands by Alwyn Hamilton. This is a young adult desert fantasy that follows a girl who grew up in a dusty town and she can't wait to escape. One day a foreigner swoops through and takes her with him on his wild adventures, and they quickly become embroiled in a plot of intrigue, politics and genie. So I really love this series and I just need to read the last book, which is on my January TBR. The main thing I really like about this is the atmosphere. One of the books is set in the Sultan's palace and I absolutely loved that book. It's the second book and it's my favourite in the series so far. So I'm really excited to wrap this up in January. We also have the Confessions of George Nicholson series by Louise Renison. I am 5 books into this, and this is a contemporary young adult story that's told in a diary form, and I am rereading the entire series apart from the last book because when I was a kid I was absolutely obsessed with this, but I never read the last book in this series, so now I'm rereading them all so I can finally get the closure that I need on this series and these characters. For my 2018 goal to read the oldest books on my Goodreads shelves, I started but did not finish the Wolves of Mercy Fall series by Maggie Stiefvater, and to be honest I don't even care and considered DNF in this series because it's not that it's bad. I give the first 2 books 3 stars and I stand by that, but I just don't care enough, you know? Like, I can't really remember how the second book ended, but I'm pretty convinced that if I don't know how the series ends I won't be bothered. But I do only have 1 book left, and if I do only have 1 book left, like, I can do it. So I'm gonna wait until I land on the paranormal section of my Bookopoly board and finally finish this series. This is a paranormal romance about werewolves. It's very character driven, so it doesn't really have a lot of plot, and that's pretty much all there is to it. In 2018, I read the first 2 volumes of Rat Queens. This is a graphic novel series that follows 4 boozy battle maiden mercenaries who go on quests. It's like a very high fantasy thing. It's really funny, they're really fighty, and they're really confident. And I absolutely love the characters in this. I have read the first 2 volumes, but I have not bought any of the others yet. And graphic novels are a little bit more pricey for the time that you put into them. So I don't like to go out and buy them all at once like I normally do if I'm reading a book in a series. I'll just buy the next one. But I have yet to collect the rest of these. I am going to continue at least to volume 3, but the art style does change drastically in volume 3. So I'm going to try number 3, and then if I don't like it, I may DNF this series, which is sad because I really love it. But at the same time, the art is make or break because it is so beautiful in volume 1 and it's really not my style in volume 3. I did start the DC Icon series in 2018, but I did only read Batman Nightwalker by Marie Lu, which is actually the second published one. But these are just a collection of companion novels about superheroes written by popular young adult authors. So it doesn't matter that I've only read the second one. I am hoping to fill in the gaps. However, I'm not sure how fast I'm going to pursue this as a series because each book is unrelated, but I am particularly excited to read the Wonder Woman one by Leigh Bardugo and the Catwoman one by Sarah J Maas, and then the last one, I can't remember who writes it, and it will be published later on in 2019. So maybe I'll wrap this up this year, maybe I won't. As you guys know, I have been reading The Giver Quartet by Lois Lowry. This is a middle grade series that follows a series of possible utopian situations after the fall of society. I was kind of ambivalent about the first 2, and then the third one made my worst books of the year. And I was pursuing these because even though I wasn't completely invested, I thought that the possible utopian societies, because each one in every book is different, I thought they were a really interesting aspect, even though because they are children's books, they weren't explored in a level of complexity that I would have preferred. I was still going through them because they were really short and they were really quick to read. However, the 4th book in this series is 400 pages and it follows a woman who has been selected to essentially be a breeding mule for the society. So I read the first couple of chapters. I don't know when I'm going to continue. I want to say that I am going to, just so I can wrap this series up, but we'll see because it might get to a couple of months and I just really don't want to anymore. I also only have 1 book left in the To All the Boys I'd Loved Before series by Jenny Han. If you guys have seen my recent slew of end of year wrap-ups, you will know that the first book made it into my most disappointing books of the year and the second book made it into my worst books of the year. This follows Lara Jean, who writes a bunch of letters to a bunch of boys. They accidentally get mailed out and she has to clean up the chaos. And while I didn't particularly enjoy the first 2 books in the series, they were both really good for keeping me out of reading slumps after I'd finished really chunky fantasies. Like, I read this one directly after Kingdom of Ash, and because it was so vastly different, it prevented me from falling into a reading slump. So I'm going to save the last book until I need a book to keep me out of a reading slump, and I'm going to complete it. A lot of you guys have told me that you think it's the worst book in the series, which is not inspiring because I didn't like the first two, but hopefully I will enjoy it more than I enjoyed this one. And then lastly, the last series that I started and will be carrying over to 2019 is the Lotus War series by J. Kristoff, and you guys know I have been absolutely adoring this. This is a Japanese inspired steampunk dystopian story that follows a girl who has been sent with her father, who is the master of the hunt for the shogun, to track down, capture and bring back to the city a mythical thunder tiger. This is fastly becoming one of my favorite series of all time. However, a subscriber did let me know in the comment section last week, I think, that the representation in this is not great and it is not accurate. I have then looked at other reviews and they were correct. A lot of the words don't really make sense if you know anything about Japanese, and also a few people did not like the portrayal of Japan in this book. Even though it's not directly Japan, it is heavily inspired to the point where it is essentially Japan. So if you will be sensitive of that, maybe be a bit more cautious, but if you can overlook that, or you don't know a lot about actual real Japanese culture like me, you may really enjoy this series. But I absolutely love it, and I cannot wait to get to the last book. One, because I love this series, and two, because I've never read the last book in a series by J. Kristoff, and I want to know how brutal it is so that I know what to expect when I get to Dark Dawn. But that is everything for my 2018 series wrap up. Please let me know what you thought of any of these series. Have you read them? Did you enjoy them? Did you hate them? But that is all for this video. Please don't forget to like if you liked it and subscribe if you want to. If you head into my description box, you'll find a link to my Goodreads, Instagram and Twitter if you'd like to follow me on any of those, as well as a link to my Bookish body butter and candle website, the Instagram for that, and a 10% off discount code. But that's it from me today. Bye!
Oh, you bite your friend like chocolate. You say you'll go where nobody knows, with guns hidden under our petticoats. We're never gonna quit it, no, we're never gonna quit it, no.